Okay, so as is very often in this industry, I haven't got long to write a track. I need to do a sound design cue that's pushing into the horror realm, but it's certainly hard hitting, aggressive sound design. So what I'm going to do is use this opportunity to see how quickly I can put together the basis of a track using Mammoth Audio's density. I use density all the time for my trailer cues and for horror stuff. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'll show you what you can do with that. I'm also going to use their new sample pack, Tank, and see how that blends with density and what I can do with that. I have some opinions with using loops and stuff in cues, and I love it when it's done right, and really don't like it when it's done wrong. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but and my opinion on what's right and wrong with loops is you can take a loop. It could be a 4-bar, 8-bar loop or whatever from a sample pack like Tank or Splice or whatever, and the real key to using those loops is to make it your own still. You can still make those loops unique. They're recorded in a way, I've had a listen through the Tank stuff, and they're recorded in a way that can be manipulated really well, and they can be stretched and time stretched and pitched down and pitched up and messed up, and I think that is the real key to using samples and loops. So keep that in mind when you're using loops. I think it's always good to be individual, even when you're provided with a really great sounding loop. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, and I'm going to try and whack out this track really quickly. So here we go. Now, one of the best things I started to do when I needed to write quickly in particular, but now I just do it for everything I write, is actually map out the entire track before you start writing anything, really. The second stage will be creating a mood, a vibe, and you can do that with a sub-hit or a drone or something. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use Tank straight off the gate actually. There's a couple of booms that I like in density, but just to kind of try something new, I'm going to have a little look to see. Boom, I mean that probably fits the bill right there, doesn't it? Let's have a listen. Ooh, let's have a listen here. Nice. Oof. Okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to create a new line, and I'm going to use that. Was it frame drum 3, I think? Maybe frame drum 2. Yeah. So these are my target points. I'm going to use this on bar 3. That'll give me 2 bars to lead into if I want to with the drone before the hit starts. If I want to, I don't always do that. We're going to go 1, 2, so let's just make sure. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 groups of 4 bars with those subs holding it. I'm going to leave a gap here, which is essentially going to work as some kind of edit point, but we'll make it tasteful. And then here we move into Act 2 with something with a bit more weight. Perfect. One more. Same again, let's give another gap, just a 1-bar gap. We'll call this exclamation mark. That's how I know it's just kind of like a transitional period. So it can either be an extended riser, a drop down, a sort of rise into a hit, something that feels good that doesn't stagger the pace of the track. And that's the real key for any drop downs or any edit points for tracks like this is, can you make the cue feel like it's not an edit point, it's just part of the track. I think that's the key to making edit points work. Act 3, and now I'm going to just copy and paste these for now, and we're going to use these across. Yeah, one more gap, and we might end up closing these gaps, who knows, but for now they're there and they're established. We're going to have what we'll call ending, which will be probably about 4 bars, I reckon, of just volume and chaos. There is a little gap there, so I'm just going to sort that out in a second. And then we call this let's call it the end card, which is going to be a really subtle boom and some kind of signature sound that we've already established throughout the track. So let me just extend these, let me extend that, right up until the end card. And we'll pick a sound for the end card after. Okay. Now I'm going to pull these as close to the front as possible. I do like sample libraries that give a little gap at the beginning. It allows you to have the full breathable sound as it hits. You get the full attack of the hit, and you can always just like whack it off if you want, but it's far more useful to have that than just a sound that kind of clips right in. So there we go. There we go. Nice. Obviously that depends on the sound as well. Okay. Okay, we have the track structured out, and it's as easy as that, and I've structured that, I've done that in about 4 minutes. So once you've got that and you're looking at the track, even in its most simple form, it makes everything else come so much easier. Now it's really just about filling gaps. Act 1, setting the mood, setting a landscape, creating an atmosphere. What world are you living in? Act 2, start adding a bit of pace. Start the sort of progression of the track. Make sure people know something's about to happen. Act 3 is the biggest build that you can do. So we're still keeping up the pace. We're still building and building and building, and you throw absolutely everything you can at this act, particularly as we get towards like the final 8 bars here. And then the ending is of a similar impact to the last part of the Act 3. It's not always needed. If the Act 3 does everything it needs to and says everything it needs to finish off the track, you can I'll just end up deleting this section. And then an end card I always add an end card, which is just some kind of subtle sub-boom with whatever signature sound or some kind of stinger that we've established throughout the track. Right. Next stage, I'm going to load up a software channel contact. Oh, density is right there. Perfect. I'm going to load up density, and I'm going to find a drone that can establish some kind of atmosphere. What I love about density is the fact that you have these 2 channels, and I definitely urge you to explore with that. Blend them. Just be very aware of kind of frequency build-up, particularly in the sub area. Like if these drones carry a lot of low end or sub, you really want to make sure that you're kind of managing that okay. So let's find sound. I'm just going to flick through a couple here. That. Let's see what the other channel has. Okay, so we've got C and D. Just keep that down a bit. just little things that you can do by adding these having these two channels and using them. It just brings a bit more individuality to what you're doing. It's making the most of what Mammoth Audio have given you. It's there, you may as well use it. That's one channel. That's another. What I'm going to do is just bring that down a bit more. Okay. So that was D minus 1 and C. Okay. Right. What I'm going to do is start it off from the beginning, so we have a 2-bar lead into this. Bring it right up to that edit point. And I'm going to bounce this in place because I absolutely love working in audio. And what that does as well, it means that I've got density already loaded up. Sorry, I'm getting loads of messages through on my phone. Okay. Now what you can see, so what I'm hearing there is I do want to use the boom at the beginning, and I think what I'm going to do is do a really exaggerated fade in here. Even more. There we go, let's do that. Really exaggerated fade in, and let those booms kind of take control. So I'm going to bring this drone down. So we're actually starting on bar 2. See, and that's how you start blending the sounds a bit. Let's give that a fade out there. I'll get rid of that clip. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly add one of my favourite reverbs to this. Relab Sunzig. I'm going to find. No, I'm going to find. Let's go with my preset here, which is basically just a bright, high-end reverb, like a shimmery reverb. Just add a bit on the tail so it kind of covers that edit point a little bit. And this is when I'm going to have a bit of fun. Bounce in place this boom. I'm going to call it sub reverse, so you probably know what's coming. Reverse that. Now I'm going to clip off the end because I don't want it to kind of hit its peak really. A fade in, fade out. Build that up to the end here. I'm going to use my friend Devil Luck. I absolutely love this plugin. Let's just see how that's sounding. I'm even going to make this fade in really exaggerated. I'm going to just clip that a bit more. I'm going to add Devil Lock to this as well, just because it's fun. And I'm going to bring the mix down, crush down, crunch up, a bit of darkness just to kind of smooth out. I find with Devil Lock it does kind of really start to mess with the high end in a kind of undesirable way, so adding a bit of darkness is same with the Decapitator saturation plugin. Just adding a bit of that darkness really helps it play its part. Automation here. Let's go to Devil Lock and mix, and what this will do is just create a bit of a build in the drone, just enough so it gives the editor who's going to work on this track just something extra to play with, and it helps blend in with this sub. It helps the build up in here, so it's not just kind of like a static drone. Sometimes that does work depending on the track, but if it's when I'm working on a cue like this, I always want to kind of take the track always has to build, and by just adding a bit of flavor to the drone, it's another way to kind of make those drone sounds in density your own. For now, I'm going to leave Act 1 because we're going to move into Act 2. Sub hit 2, sub hit 1. I'm kind of an organizational freak, so I have to kind of make sure everything is in place and named, and I've got all the logos, and helps me keep track of everything. Okay. Right then, so now Act 2, this is about adding some kind of pace to the track. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that density there for the drones, and I'm going to bring up another one. I think what I want to do with this is have some kind of organic nature to it. So I think I am going to use the cello. I've been using my own cello quite a lot recently, but for this instance I'm short on time, so I am going to use the cello from density, which is about as real a cello as you can get. It sounds so fantastic. Let's just call it okay, that sounds like C is going to work for this. I'm just going to quickly bring down the buffer size so I can play this in. There might be a bit of a delay anyway because of the screen recording, but we'll give it a shot. Low latency mode is on. Fantastic. If you're doing live recordings, you can go to customize control bar and display, and you'll find low latency mode here. Just a little side help if you need it. Okay, bit of a delay. Yeah, massive delay, but it doesn't matter. That's just because of the screen flow. Okay, establish a rhythm. Okay, now what I do like to do is just make sure if you're looping stuff, just play with the velocities, especially with a cello or a sample instrument that has this much detail. It's definitely worth doing. Okay, lots of velocities going on there, and then just take back the quantize a little bit. What that'll do is just humanize it slightly, or maybe I'll just do this manually. Let's see how that sounds. Just gonna put this. So important to humanize sample libraries, especially when they're that isolated and by themselves. It really helps. Okay, so what we've got. As you can see, I've used the drone from the beginning. I'm just going to build a bit more of a riser with it, and using sounds that you've used in different ways. So like I've taken a drone now, and I'm going to kind of build a bit of a rise with it, a bit more of an extreme rise than we've done here. Just brings a bit of continuity to the track. I've got sound shifter here, which is brilliant. I try not to mess around with pitch too much because it can get a bit weird, but if you use pitch sense and make sure the automation curve is smooth, it can have a really cool effect to some tracks. Sometimes sound shifter doesn't work very well, so if it doesn't work very well, I tend to use Alter Boy. Soundtoys Alter Boy is also good. I found that on a source, either Alter Boy works really well or Sound Shifter works really well, and they tend to work well on different sources. Great. Okay, now easy as pie. I don't really know what that saying means, but here we go. I am going to hard quantize this now, just to begin with, because I am going to go ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. And this is just how we progress the pace and the track. So ba, 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 ba. Okay. Super simple. The glue tool is brilliant for marrying MIDI or audio tracks together. Really good, useful little thing. Okay, so I'm going to bring the pitch up. Let's see how it sounds together. Do you know what I'm going to do? I am going to create a new track. going to have the high cello on its own track. And I'm going to make this super creepy by just pitching it down very slightly. Sound shifter. Again, pitch sense. Let's just kind of go with. All very slightly late. Ooh. Let's turn low latency mode off, hear what that sound shifter's doing. Just sort of pitching it down very slightly just brings in that kind of creepiness, and the it just makes it feel like it's been played badly, which is how I play the cello generally. So that's kind of what we want to get from this cue. Now I'm going to use this again. Now what these drone risers will become is a layer of a bigger riser. And that is really important, especially when you're just kind of dragging and dropping samples in. It really helps bring character to your track, unique character to your track, I should say. Always important, especially as the track builds. There'll be more hits going on here. It's always important to remember that the sub information in particular will be building, and that will have the most footprint on your track. If sub information is stacked, your stereo out will blow out far quicker than if it isn't. So just keep that in mind as you're going. Only really one or two bits of music or samples should be taking up that sub information, and you just have to really think about where you're placing stuff. Anyway, I digress. Okay. Okay, I want another hit here, so I'm going to go to tank. Hit. Let's see what we've got. I'm going to use that in Act 3. That's going to be my hit 1. Now I am going to use a sound that I use all the time, and I really mean all the time, and it's not part of Tank, it's not part of Density, but it is part of the Mammoth Audio Lash Pack. Let me see, let's use Bass Strike, I think, and this is really fantastic. I find that sound is quite, it takes up a lot of space in the frequency spectrum, which is great, but it's also nondescript enough that you can layer it and make it really unique with different layers. So I'm going to let that, if we have a little look at Fab Filter here, and we'll see, just knock it up about 25, and we'll see where it's hitting in the frequency spectrum. Yeah, so a lot of sub-information, a lot of information around here, So what I'm going to do, because these will be all part of the same bus, I am going to add track spacer here. I'm going to call this lash 1. And yeah, and the great thing about this track spacer plugin is you choose which frequencies it's going to work in. So I'm going to let lash take over all the way up to about 100 and keep the ratio down a little bit. And what that does is it means that this tank hit gets out of the way of the low end of the lash hit. Now what I will do as well, we've got a lot of sub in this hit here, this boom. Let's just have a little look at what's going on in that. Yeah, so we've got that kind of all in the same kind of region. So what I'm going to do is have another instance of track spacer here, and I'm going to pick that sub hit to roll it off, and I'm going to use I'm going to get it out of the way of that 60 mark, so just maybe around there I think we'll do it. So listen. That's going to really help get it out of the way. What I'm going to do is make sure this tail is nice and long as well. So I'm going to use again that Sonsig reverb, and I'm going to just give it a big old tail and see if that helps fill that gap. Yes. I'm going to use find another hit to go in the middle there. I'm going to go back to my tank here. I'm going to use this. Let's see what we've got. Nice, I like that. I copied this channel, so I've got track spacer working against lash here. Got a really nice long tail on it as well, just to extend it. Yeah. Cool. So we've built up our hits there really nicely. Okay, so I've been working on this for about 15-20 minutes, and I'm going to play it for you, break down exactly what I've done, and at this stage now it's ready to be kind of managed with gain staging, make sure everything's hitting nicely with plenty of headroom for EQing and compressing and everything else, so it hits the stereo out in a nice way. It's going to clip now, but it won't later. I'll just break down exactly the sounds that I've added and what I've done and how it's all pieced together. So let's have a quick listen. Okay, so everything that you're hearing there, I've used either density or tank. A couple of sounds, I actually used one of the free packs from Mammoth Audio. I used this Boam hit here, this track spacer. Again, I think it's the lash hit that I used. Yeah. So every time the lash hit happens, which is quite a lot, and it's always when the Boam is happening, I have this track spacer that just ducks it. So below 120, it just cuts that out of the Boam sound and makes room for all the low end to come through. Makes everything marry really well. The problem that you have when there's so many items and sources with sub information on it is that it just builds up and it just swallows your track. You really need to be very precise in which instruments are controlling which frequency ranges, particularly in the lower end. Particularly with the organic sound design tracks like this, it's very important that you have elements that all control different parts of the frequency range. I think that's relative to all mixing and all kinds of tracks, but particularly in an organic sound design track like this, where there's a lot of space and you're using tension and release to its maximum effect, I think it's really, really important. So I added some extra percussion here as well. Again, no real mixing just yet. I heavily affected this loop from tank. I'll play it without the decapitator and the equalizer. A lot of sub information there, an awful lot, and it wasn't really cutting through. It wasn't serving a purpose in the track, even though it was hitting when the other hits weren't happening. It wasn't really bringing a lot. So what I did is just rolled it off, changed what the sound was doing, added a load of saturation. I think it sounds like I rolled it off a fair bit here as well. Yeah, and added a big peak on the highs there, and that just gives it a place in the track. There's a riser here as well, which is built from the drones that we've done. So all of these drones, this drone that we started off that builds very subtly, I've been using in every single act and just upping the aggression on the processing and the curves that we use. So here we've got the Devil Lock building to 100% mix, which is pretty extreme. The pitch is moving up as well. Let's have a listen to the end of that. Yeah, and then this drone as well here, doing the same kind of thing. And I'm blending that with these three other risers here. This first string one is one from Tank, which is a really good sounding one for this track, being as we have strings here. I've added Devil Lock, a bit of reverb. This is a really fantastic LX480 reverb using string space. I actually used a preset, signature preset here. I think it was from Furch, string space. Really fantastic from Relab. And then this is a go-to riser of mine, Chainsaw Joy. Now this is one that came with the free Mammoth Audio pack, a rise. It's fantastic. It's it's like a classic trailer riser that can fit on pretty much anything. So I tend to use that all over the place, whatever track I'm working on. And then this final one was about a 30-second riser from the Tank pack. So all together, it kind of creates its own unique riser. I did use Soothe on one riser here, I believe, on the strings. Risers are a tricky one because the nature of them is their frequency range increases, their volume tends to increase as well, and their pitch. So sometimes it's good to add something like Soothe or multiband compression, or even a dynamic EQ like the Fab Filter EQ. I didn't really need to do it on these ones, but you can add just a dynamic EQ here just to manage some of the high end. It can really help. And that will just help manage those frequencies that are kind of building up as the track progresses, if you need to. With the strings and the cello, I added a couple of sections. I built them in a slightly different way. I made this higher one come in a bit earlier with this rhythm. It's just always driving towards that build. Every track, it always has to build. Give the editor something to work with at every point in the track. And then another one comes in later. Okay, now I have a low cut there. I've got Soothe working, close mic strings. I think this is a Daryl Thorpe one, maybe. Is it? No, it's not. But close mic strings just to kind of help. It's a preset on Soothe 2, fantastic plugin that just kind of helps soothe, soothe everything. A bit of compression just to glue it all together, and one of my favourite EQs on buses. I'm just sort of boosting 12 by about 4, and attenuating the low end just a little bit. Very subtle on Soothe. This is very early mix stuff though. This is just managing files more than anything. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put everything into their groups. I'm going to manage the gain of everything, make sure everything's hitting with a nice bit of headroom, do a bit of EQing, and then see what space is left in the track, and if we want to add any more instruments to really build this track up to a climax at the end. And at that stage then I'll do some of the fine-tune mixing.